Thank you for joining us on BNC Live. I'm Brittany Jones. Happy to be back with you this Saturday. Well, the fight to save Governor Andrew Cuomo's reputation and his job continues in the state of New York. This as Cuomo's team attacks a report after a staffer files a criminal complaint against the governor. Today, the Albany Sheriff's Office held a press conference to address the allegations.
I know the difference between putting together a case against a target versus doing independent fact-finding with an open mind. There has been no open-minded fact-finding here in this investigation. This investigation was conducted in a manner to support a predetermined narrative.
An attorney for Governor Andrew Cuomo slamming the findings of the Attorney General's report.
Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, and in doing so violated federal and state law.
And the investigators behind it calling into question their methods and their independence.
What we have asked for and are entitled to is the evidence. We're entitled to get the transcripts, the underlying documents that support that report. This was one-sided, and he was ambushed.
Just hours after learning of the first criminal complaint filed against the governor by a current staffer known in the AG's report as Executive Assistant Number 1.
On November 16, 2020, in the Executive Mansion, the governor hugged Executive Assistant Number 1 and reached under her blouse to grab her breast. This was the culmination of a pattern of inappropriate sexual conduct, including numerous close and intimate hugs.
Allegations the governor denies.
A woman in my office who said that I groped her in my home office. Let me be clear, that never happened.
His attorney pointing to visitor logs from the governor's mansion and emails that day that she says support his claim.
She was at the mansion that day for several hours. She wasn't just working with the governor, she was working with other staffers. Emails that she sent while she was at the mansion reflect that she was joking while she was there. She was eating snacks, and she even offered to stay longer at the mansion when her work was done.
My client has consistently said and testified that she did not know the exact date. The accuser's attorney told CNN, and she will respond further in due course. Allegations from a former member of Cuomo's security detail identified as Trooper Number 1 also raising new questions. At least 3 county DAs have asked the AG for information about her claims.
In an elevator, while standing behind the trooper, he ran his finger from her neck down her spine and said, "Hey, you." Another time, she was standing holding the door open for the governor. As he passed, he took his open hand and ran it across her stomach. She told us that she felt completely violated.
The governor will address that allegation himself, and so I will let him speak for himself when he does.
When will he do that?
I can't give you a timeline, but I know he wants to do it soon.
And a spokesperson for the state attorney general criticized Governor Cuomo's defense attorneys. The statement says it was wrong to try to undermine the investigation, but more importantly, undermining the credibility of the 11 women who came forward takes away from their bravery in speaking out about sexual harassment. And our mental health and wellness expert, Jane Marx, is with me now to talk more about this. Jane, good evening.
Good evening, Brittany.
And so, Jane, obviously these are very serious accusations. The general report described the series of incidents as deeply disturbing, but yet a very clear picture of his wrongdoing. We're just hearing about what happened, but what happens to the women who say they actually experienced it?
You know, by the time we've heard from these women, they have gone through so much, Brittany. You know, so many of them have experienced shock, disbelief that it even happened to them. You know, again, once they process that, they're likely to experience depression or anger, you know, just in some cases disgust that they allowed it to happen. They begin to self-evaluate themselves. How is it that I allowed myself to, you know, for this experience to happen? And then the other thing that they also face is victim shaming. And so all of these things are possibilities as a result of having gone through this experience.
Yeah. And Jane, I mean, you've worked with victims who've experienced this and who've spoken up to you about it, but when it was time to report an incident, they actually became afraid, you mentioned. What type of courage does it take to actually come forward?
You know, typically it takes enormous courage, because when you look at the track record of most of these cases, when people do come forward, you know, the legal system for years really didn't listen to it. And so to be able to take that step, you almost have to walk the walk with someone else. You know, you've got to talk to trusted people. In some cases, some of the women have had to go through therapy, and they've had to process what emotionally to them has been very damaging. So for them, it just takes courage, and it takes, in some cases, an army just to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I don't want to imagine having to experience something like that. So when we talk about long term, obviously, how do these women cope with the mental health impact that this could have on their lives?
Well, when you talk about coping, you know, first of all, you've got to process it. And then when you process it, if there's a history in your family, or in your case, of predisposition towards anxiety, depression, you're likely to experience that. So it's real important for them to get, you know, a lot of them have gotten help. Others have taken care of themselves. You know, we talk about self-care and being very mindful, and again, you know, again, taking care of themselves in terms of making sure that they make decisions and doing things that serve them as opposed to not serve them, not putting themselves in situations that will elicit those kinds of memories, because again, you know, that will stall them out. You know, there's a concept that I teach my patients, because when this happens, you know, there's so much self-examination. There's a term called tonic immobility. When these things happen, first of all, you don't expect them to happen, and you're paralyzed. And you're paralyzed, and you think to yourself, why didn't I do anything? But you're so paralyzed because you don't expect someone that you come in contact, in this case, these are people that they knew, to participate in this kind of behavior. So they've got to process that. And then once you process that, then again, you know, you have to decide, am I going to take a step? Am I going to be courageous enough to do this? Because if I do, I've got to be willing to take the possible horrible feedback that's going to happen. Because when they witness other people, like, you know, look at what happened with Bill Cosby and that whole situation.
Yes.
You know, again, when he, again, was allowed to, well, for whatever reasons, when everything was turned over, and all these women who had been through this, they're now re-experiencing it again. So, you know, this is a tough road for sexual abuse survivors. It is.
And I mean, Jane, and I think about what happens when they have to face their the people who they're accused of doing this, when they see those people, when they see their family members or folks who may be putting those grueling eyes on them. How do they face those folks?
Well, you know, it's tough. It's tough. But usually when they have to face them, it is with preparation. They have talked to specialists. You know, one good thing about the Me Too movement is that there's more focus on the victims now. It used to be, it was the victim's responsibility, total responsibility to prove the case. But now there is much more support. And so in order to be able to get through this, you need to use all of your resources. You know, not just trusted friends, but professionals who can guide you through this process, because still, no matter what, it's a very personal thing, it's a very painful experience, and again, it's, you know, it takes, like we just talked about a minute ago, Brittany, it takes courage to get through this. And
Jane, I mean, how does the politics play a role in this, and whether or not someone will take the accuser seriously when it comes to like a powerful person in leadership? I mean, we're talking about the Cuomo incident in this case.
Yeah, it is, because think about it. We held him up on a pedestal because we look forward to those daily conversations he was having about COVID and how is it? And then here's a person who has so much power, has tentacles everywhere, who probably has friends who's willing to, you know, take care of the situation. And so and then you think about people who feel like they don't want to take their leaders down, you know, even though they participated in this horrible behavior. You don't want to be responsible for taking somebody out. So it is a dilemma for victims. But in this case, and when you think about this, and here's what's going to help them to pivot, that the decisions that they make at this point is going to help future victims. And so I think that will help so many women and men across the country come forward in situations like this, because it could be life-changing for, you know, future generations.
Certainly. And Jane, I mean, just some of the advice that you would give to any of those women who right now are obviously trying to process all of this and how they may be feeling and not knowing how to actually know how to feel. What would you say?
I would say the first thing that you have to do is you've got to acknowledge the fact that you've got these feelings, accept it, and you must give yourself grace. And as you get through, as you go through this process, develop a support system that you can go to when these feelings are so overwhelming and so painful for you, because you don't want to participate in any kind of risky stuff, because you are at risk for overdoing substances, you are at risk for hurting yourself, and you don't want that to happen. So the important thing is that you must take care of yourself.
Yeah. And we got to see how this all plays out. Jane Marx, our mental health and wellness expert, thank you so much for weighing in on this for us tonight. And growing concerns for parents sending children back to school during a fourth coronavirus surge. When we return, find out what parents should know about keeping their kids healthy this school year. Recently, the Federal Housing Administration opted to relax student loan repayment requirements. However, with the coronavirus outbreak, many other factors have emerged and are expected to continue to stand in the way of minority home buyers. PNC's Narissa Knight spoke to homeowners and renters in several states and shows us how they're being impacted. Many thanks to Narissa. The United States has regressed on progress as the nation is now averaging 100,000 daily COVID-19 infections, a number the nation has not seen since the pre-vaccine winter surge. This comes as the country combats the fast-spreading Delta variant. Health officials believe that cases, hospitalizations, and deaths will spike if more Americans do not get vaccinated. So here's a look at the latest numbers from Johns Hopkins University. The U.S. is currently reporting more than 35.7 million confirmed cases and more than 616,000 deaths. More than 50% of Americans have been fully vaccinated, and more than 70% of adults have received at least one dose. And many schools across the nation are returning to in-person learning. However, this is causing concern for some parents as schools throughout the U.S. are not enforcing mask mandates. Here to help ease some back-to-school COVID fears is parenting expert, author, and educator Kimberly Murrow. Kim, good evening and welcome to PNC.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me.
We're happy to have you with us. We know a lot of these parents have some concerns and many questions. So Kim, as students across the nation are going back to school this month, how can parents actually make sure their kids are prepared when they return back to the classroom during this new normal?
Well, one of the things, because all students won't be coming from the same type of home situation. So some parents will be enforcing masks. So if you're a parent who you're concerned about your child and you want to make sure that they're safe, make sure you pack an extra mask with them when you send them to school. So that way, if they happen to drop that one or lose it, they'll have an extra mask or two. Have them, place some hand sanitizer in their backpack as well, along with some wipes, so that way they can wipe their hands. And you want to encourage them to wash their hands often and try to maintain that social distancing, which way it'll be difficult because they'll be around their friends and they'll be excited to be back in a social setting. So just reminding them every day that you want them to have fun and be back with their friends, but you also want them to be safe without scaring the children.
That is definitely some good advice there. Again, many parents are very concerned about this. What also advice would you give them to tell their children when they're in the classroom and they are taking out the hand sanitizer and they're doing all these things to help protect themselves, but what other things could you tell them to kind of give their children a peace of mind?
Well, as far as the children, I would just make sure that they are constantly reminded that they don't want to have anyone breathing on them or sneezing on them because it is airborne. So they do want to, whenever it's possible, maintain that distance. Because first of all, it's children, it's school. Children always get sick going to school because that's just the nature of the beast. As teachers, we always get sick. We get sick from our students. So just reminding them that cover your mouth, keep your mask on. And if someone comes in contact with you and it's a little too close, just remind them, keep your distance, or, oh, don't forget to put your mask on. My students are very good with that. They'll remind each other. They've reminded each other during the summer camp, don't forget to put your mask up. Don't forget to put your mask over your nose. So it's really good if children get into the habit of that. And again, without scaring them and without having them so fearful. We want them to, we don't want them to live in fear every day. But we do want to remind them about these healthy habits.
And Kim, you touched on that. What about children's mental health? How should parents teach kids about being safe during a pandemic without causing irrational fear, especially when it comes to our Black and brown communities who have been so impacted by this virus?
Well, hopefully, if their children are at an age where they can get vaccinated, hopefully they're getting them vaccinated. If they're not able to get vaccinated, they're just reminding them that, again, just to remain safe, just to do whatever it is that's going to protect you. They can even bring up, remember when you had the flu, or remember when mommy had the flu. So it's the same type of illnesses. Obviously, as parents, we know it's much more serious, but we just want to we don't want to alarm our children. We don't want them to be so afraid. We just want to constantly practice those good habits. Wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, keep your mask on, take it off when you're eating, but then when you're eating, make sure you're distance from your friends when you're eating next to them. So we don't want to scare them, but we also want to make sure that they are understanding that we can't take this for granted, and we want them to be safe. We want them to practice safety.
Yeah, all great advice there, and make sure our babies are safe. Well, Kim, thank you so much. We appreciate your time tonight. The baby's Rolling Loud statements are still fueling fire among his fans. Now his pockets are taking a hit because of those comments. Could this extinguish his career for good? We'll dive into that story ahead on BNC Live. Welcome back to BNC Live. Rapper DaBaby losing endorsements after his controversial comments on HIV/AIDS. And now we know the cancel culture is real, folks. Festivals, radio stations, and a fashion line have kicked him to the curb. But will he ever be able to bounce back? BNC's Los Angeles correspondent Anita Bennett takes a look. Welcome back to BNC Live. Sometimes it's just not easy to express yourself to people, whether it's your family members or your coworkers, and it oftentimes takes a lot of courage to actually speak up. Well, this SelfCare Saturday on BNC, one mental health advocate is encouraging Black men to do just that. Founder Kofi Forson created a platform called Express Yourself Black Men to help improve mental health. Kofi Forson, thank you so much for joining us for SelfCare Saturday, and welcome to BNC.
Thank you, Brittany. I'm happy to be here.
We are excited to have you with us as well. I love talking about mental health on SelfCare Saturday. So first, I want you to talk about why you created Express Yourself Black Men, and how is this platform serving as a tool for Black men's mental health?
So I created Express Yourself Black Man to be a space for Black men specifically, but for all Black people to feel comfortable expressing themselves. I found myself as a Black man not really feeling comfortable being vulnerable, not really feeling comfortable with my emotional intelligence. We're talking about things like therapy and my emotions, and so Express Yourself Black Man is a space where I just try to be as vulnerable as possible. I call it leading with vulnerability, and trying to create a space where the Black community has more where they can go for healing, especially on media.
And Kofi, when you talk about being vulnerable, that's not something easy, especially for Black men. Why is it so hard for Black men to actually express themselves?
I think it's hard for Black men to express ourselves because we're taught from young that emotions make us weak. So as we get older, we start to harden and we feel like any kind of expression of our emotions is a sign of weakness. And so it's a barrier that we set up, and society doesn't really help us. It teaches us directly and indirectly that our emotions are a sign of weakness. So it's something that we have to learn to deal with and learn and unlearn.
And what do you usually say to people who are trying to, I guess, unlearn that, if you will?
I normally tell them that they have to do some kind of self-reflection, right? Like I try to push therapy as much as I can, but I also know that we don't have, a lot of us don't have access to therapy, or a lot of us are very unwary about or wary about going to therapy. So I try to create resources on Express Yourself Black Man. What I mean by resources is I try to create posts where we talk about expressing ourselves, talk about how to do that the right way. Main thing that I do is I lead with vulnerability, and I talk about things that I know affect me as a Black man. And then normally what I'll see is in the comments or in my DMs, I'll get Black men that are thanking me or that are sharing their stories. So the best thing that I try to do is just lead with vulnerability. And I notice that when I lead with vulnerability, when I talk about what I'm dealing with, it frees other people to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned your social media platform. I've seen the posts on your page, and one man actually mentioned by just hearing or reading those daily affirmations has led them to actually seek therapy on their own, which can also be hard for people in general. But you couple that with, a Black man, it's especially hard for you all. So since, in our culture, there's a stigma surrounding us seeking help, how important is it to you to help break that stigma?
I think it's paramount. Like that's the main thing I'm trying to do. So like any kind of post that I create about expressing myself, about being vulnerable, I always therapy. I'm in therapy myself. I've been in therapy for about a year, and I know it's taught me so many different things. And if it wasn't for therapy, I wouldn't actually have started Express Yourself Black Man, and I wouldn't be as effective. The community wouldn't be as effective as it is today. So I always try to push therapy, and I know it's extremely important in teaching us how to be more emotionally intelligent and how to be more stable, loving human beings. So it's one of the main motivators that led me to start Express Yourself Black Man. It's like talking to one of your friends. Like we don't realize it that we express ourselves to people that we feel most comfortable with. Therapy is the same way. It's like talking to one of your friends, or I tell them like one of your homies, and you're just breaking down what went down. Like you're telling them a story. It's just that with a therapist, you have someone that's a professional that can actually tell you where you went wrong, where you went right, and then try to give you some corrective methods or tools and techniques that you can use to be able to deal with your emotions or deal with whatever situation comes your way. Society often tells us that therapy is like you sit down in a room and you have someone that's on a couch or on a chair that's just taking notes. And that's not how therapy is at all. You sit down, your therapist asks you what's going on, you get to express and vent, and then they get to kind of either soothe those emotions and also give you tools and techniques for how to deal with them.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because I remember when I first decided to go to therapy on my own, my mom said to me, "Are you laying on the couch telling somebody all of your business?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually sitting on the couch. I'm not laying on the couch. But yes, I'm telling them my business. And yes, they have the tools to be able to help you." So it's like I said, breaking that stigma surrounding about you're not crazy because you go to see a therapist. So Kofi, what is your mental health and self-care tip for the week?
So I would say my self-care tip for the week is to get some rest. A lot of times in our community, in our society, we glorify not resting, we glorify not sleeping. We think that is a sign of like strength or a sign that you're busy and that you're doing what you should be doing. But everybody needs rest. We should be aiming for 7 to 9 hours of sleep a day. So get some rest. Stop overworking yourself. That would be my self-care tip. And then my mental health tip would be to check in with yourself. How are you feeling? Really ask yourself, 1 to 10, how am I feeling today? And then also try to set some time for checking in with yourself habitually.
That is great, because we know our mental health is so important. Well, Kofi, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me for SelfCare Saturday.
Thank you so much, Brittany.
Take care. And you can find Kofi on Instagram, his podcast at Express Yourself Black Man, and his website at expressyourselfblackman.com.
day to get out and do something. 90 degrees, staying in the 90s all week long, Britt. But you know, you have those chances, those afternoon showers and thunderstorms. But you know what? Enjoy Sunday while you can.
Enjoy it while we can. I'm just looking at the fact that, oh my God, it's already August.
I can't believe it, Brett. That means back to school. That means, you know, we're inching closer to Halloween and my birthday. So I'm like,
Yeah, and inching closer to the fall. We kind of giving fall vibes up here today.
We are giving very much autumn.
Yes, well, Britt, guess what? The force is with us, or is it? Okay, strong with this one. Walt Disney is preparing to send guests to a galaxy far, far, far away. Disney's new Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser hotel opens next spring, but a night stay may cost you more than your mortgage. Newly listed sample prices offer 2-night packages starting at $4,809. The hotel, the hotel is a model of the famous Star Wars Star Cruiser ship, where visitors will receive an all-immersive, all-inclusive, multi-day experience. Real-life Jedi training, theme park tickets, and more are all included. The park opens in next spring in 2022.
And that's you know, this is a big deal. This is Star Wars. I always get Star Wars and Star Trek. You know, I've never seen a Star Wars movie from start to finish.
Me neither.
Okay, so we're gonna have to get together and get some popcorn
and watch
to see if this is worth. You said 4,000?
Yeah, because I don't know if I can make it to the hotel with that type of money. If y'all want to donate. But that does it for this hour of BNC Live. We'll see you back here with more news, weather, and sports. They can drop it in my account.